Good morning, everyone. I'm Stacy with Stacy's Organizing and Decorating for Life. I'm here to help you organize your thoughts and decorate your perspectives. So today our topic is going to be thoughts and perspectives on dating after a lockdown. I posted a quote on Facebook, of course, and we're going to use that quote today as well. But before we get started, if you're, coming back weekly and, you're loyal and dedicated to watching my videos on a weekly basis, I just want you to know how much I love and appreciate you. And I thank you very much. For those of you who are new to this channel, I have to let you know that I'm not a doctor, psychologist, psychiatrist, a scientist, any of those things, but I like to share on those things. What I am is a life coach, and I have a webpage called stacyforlife.com. And on this webpage, I write a monthly blog, but more importantly, there's a description of the services that I provide as a life coach dealing with addiction, codependency, and grief. Not exclusively to those things, because underneath those things lies a desire for healing and healthy relationships, as well as development of spiritual and soul consciousness. Really, it's about going within to feel comfortable in your own skin. So if you or anyone you know need help in any of those areas, please feel free to check it out. Look me up at stacyforlife.com, and you can email me. I have a new email exclusively just for you all to give me suggestions or feedback or topics yourselves of things that you're struggling with, So that email is stacyreneeforlife@gmail.com. So I look forward to hearing from you. So let's get into today's topic. So we're looking at the thoughts and perspectives on dating, relationships. It extends more further than dating, so please stay tuned as we get into it. So, when we look at dating and all of this, everything is just an extension of ourselves, and dating is too. So oftentimes people want to date. First off, the reason why. Why do we want to date? And that is because what we're hoping to receive from dating is validation, right? Love. This is what we're getting in the beginning of it. This is why it preoccupies the space and the obsessions in our mind. Because we're getting validation, we're getting love, we're getting adoration, and we're getting attention. So that's very important to us when we're starting to date somebody, and that's why we, get so deeply involved in the dating process. But there's things, that I see as a coach getting into this. First off, as a coach, oftentimes when the weight starts wearing off of wounds, people start feeling a little lighter, and that's important because that's the kind of energy we want to bring to dating. However, if we're not through, we're feeling lighter, but if we're not through, and we just go back into the obsession of many of the things, the obsession, distraction of the things that are unhealed in us, and we're not conscious or aware that they're unhealed with us. Conscious is a word that, to me, consciousness deals with connection, and that's what we want when we're dating. However, the thing is that we forget that all of this is within inside ourselves. All the love, validation, adoration, and attention must be something that we give ourselves so we can extend it outwards. We're taught that this cosmic being called God, and everything is outside of ourselves. So hence, this is why we look for love outside of ourselves. When we can realize that we have the God seed, so to speak, or that divine spark within us, that's our connection to other people, because other people have that same thing. So when we're dating, we're looking for people who are compatible with us. However, dating through the years has gotten all kind of messed up, and everything. So in the old days when we looked at dating, the women had what they called suitors. Now, a lot of things had needed to evolve and change, but there's some things that, are still valid today. This is why I like to look at the mystical thoughts of everything, because when we can see where everything comes from, even the words that we use in today's language comes back from the mystical thought. These were people who did not have distractions, such as the TVs, such as, all the different things we use as distractions. And all of those are not bad. Because of those people, we are able to come up with these distractions. So this is how we realize that we are all so divinely connected, because we are meant to evolve. But things have to change. And sometimes when things are changing so rapidly as they were before this lockdown pandemic and all of this, everything gets lost in translation, so to speak. So I haven't dated in a while, but what I'm going to say is I help people with dating, and the reasons I share these videos and the experience that I've gotten is from my own mistakes and the lessons I've learned. Some people can learn from other people's mistakes. I have a brother that he does, but I have another brother that he's like me. He has to do it himself, and he even goes bigger than me sometimes. So anyway, we all learn our own ways. So getting back to this and the topic of how we're learning is that when I'm sharing with people, I'm going to make a few suggestions in this video as well. And when we haven't dated in a long while, as in the lockdown, I have some friends that were locked down all alone and they're wanting relationships, and they talk to the people who were locked down with a partner who can't wait to get out, so they're like, where are we going to find harmony there? So the harmony is being able to keep our individuality. So I'm going to read you my thoughts, because as I'm working with people, I'm seeing that some people are getting distracted from their appointments with their life coach, and I'll know how far we've gotten, and so I know that we still have work to do, but yet it's spring, and summer's coming and stuff. So let me read you what I was thinking over the weekend, because when I say people are distracted, okay, so they're missing appointments. So even when they're in the appointment, they're obsessing about the person on the other end. And I see these as red flags. It's good, but when you have something, so here's my thoughts and perspectives. This is where it started, and I'm going to tell you where it's going. So it says, spring is sprung, getting ready for summer loving, but we are forgetting self-love. These are my own thoughts, but sometimes I have to write them down so I remember when I get to this video. Doing things for ourselves, by ourselves, will help us and others appreciate and value the time together more. So I'm trying to remind you of this. Or, as we're experiencing, and I've done myself, that we can say, fuck that. We end up like the last time, right? Remember, we teach people how to treat us. And are we setting ourselves up for unreasonable expectations? So this is where it's going. You've been in a lockdown for a while, and so everyone's out, and it's, we desire that connection. Like I said, that divine spark. We want to spark with somebody else. So oftentimes we get out there and we start seeing the same things within ourselves and somebody else, but we think somebody else is giving us this stuff. We think that we're getting it from somebody else because we've been taught in society. We've been taught by our own parents who didn't have all the resources that we have today, that the mystics, kind of co-created with the past, because the past, present, and future in a quantum field all work together, and all of this stuff is happening together. So this is why, as we heal, we're healing past generations and future generations. If you can get out of that limited thinking box, and this is the thing about dating, is that people get in this limited thinking. So when we don't have suitors, when, dating used to imply that we're dating a few people, so that you could choose somebody who you were actually compatible with, because the dating process is getting to know somebody. But what happens is people get singled out and zone in and obsessed with this one thing. My mama used to say, don't put all your eggs in one basket, and she didn't know that now, we can even expand upon that, it's about knowing ourselves. We weren't taught, and they weren't taught, that to value ourselves first, and so we've had this generational thing go down the years where, that desire to get outside of ourselves. So in working with people, I suggest to people always to get in their bodies, whether you're dating or whatever you're doing, is to get in your bodies. When people are obsessing, I'm catching people now in this season obsessing over these people in the phone or these people somewhere else, and I'm like, are you in your body? I encourage people oftentimes to get out when we're looking back for our soul's desires, to get out and walk, walk 2 blocks. Some people are feeling sluggish, unhealthy, and everything else. So it's like they're complaining about their weight. They're complaining about nothing to do. It's like, get out and walk 2 blocks. And I want you to notice what you notice in 2 blocks. Come back to me and report 3 things that you notice because that is your divine connection. Because see, when we're born, that's before the programming starts. So we already have that divine connection. If you can think back to when you were born, I remember when I was a kid, some of the crazy thoughts I would think, like, is there somebody just like me, on this other side? Is there somebody feeling the things I do? Is there this? Because we know that there is, because when we're looking at a quantum field, we're still there, So I'm not going to get into all of that, because that's not what you're listening to this for, because we're talking about dating and the quick fix. Instant dating. And this is what happens, is that people get zoned in on that one person, okay, because of this physical attraction, so we had the suitors in one area, then the sexual, revolution came. So we understand that we're physically attracted and drawn to people, even chemical. And some of that chemistry is because of that healing that's necessary and needed, because I wouldn't have gotten to where I was if I hadn't had to do some healing myself. And I wouldn't be, trying to share my experience with you if I didn't have that experience. And I can't help others if I didn't ever help myself. And this is where the codependent part is that, so we get into the relationships, we zone in, we obsess, and when we haven't finished the healing, this is going to be suggestion number one, or this is a strong suggestion, is that don't talk about your previous dates with your dates. When you're starting to date somebody and get all this, we get people, we're talking on the phone for 2 or 3 hours with people, we're telling them about our old relationships, and they're telling you about theirs, and so we have this commonness. That commonness means there's a need for healing, because you're both bringing junk back into the new relationship, see? Because really, when we're looking at expansion, we're looking at what somebody else's intentions are, their dreams and goals and desires. When we go back, and have that energy of healing, we have that energy of what we don't want, well, we're carrying that once again into the relationship that we are wanting right now. But we've already gone into it with that energy, and we've already gone into it with that obsession, because we're obsessing, talking about these things. It's exciting too. There is that exciting energy. It's not just that you're just talking about those things. It's an energy of wanting to feel that love. So what happens is when we're setting ourselves up for these unrealistic expectations I just talked about, is this. Let me read you my post from Facebook so we can see how this coordinates and comes together, because it's happened with me. This quote that I'm going to share from Facebook. In 2002, I ended up divorced because of the codependence, and this is what I'm talking about in these relationships where we get obsessive with each other. We start wanting to feel the feelings of the other person. We're sharing that feelings and everything, and talking about our trials and tribulations and all of this, and that common camaraderie. So in codependency, the biggest, strongest gifts I got to learn was it's not all about me, because this is what we're feeling when somebody's stopping their time, stopping their session, stopping whatever it is that they're doing, stopping hanging out with their friends, they quit doing all of this because they become obsessed. So what they're teaching the person when they become obsessed is that they don't have their own life and they don't value their own life. So you're teaching people that you don't value, it's not an unconscious thing. It's teaching people you don't value your time, you don't value your life, and then what happens is 3 months, 6 months, 9 months down the road, sometimes a year or two, that you get resentful because you're not doing anything for yourself, and you don't even know what to do for yourself because you've come in this codependent enmeshment. You see, and this is the obsession starts this enmeshment. When you want to get away and you want to do your own things and stuff, where our hope is that they're going to be kind and understanding. But when we go into this relationship with our own wounds, those wounds are there. So maybe you're wanting to run away because it's getting too suffocating, but the person on the other end, and this is why our wounds work together. It's not to judge either person. It's to understand why these wounds are working together, because if we have the capacity to grow, and if we can grow together, that's really awesome, but it's not always the case. So I got divorced in 2002, worked on the codependency for 2 years. I went to meetings, I worked the steps, I had a sponsor, I sounded this stuff off, I learned it's not all about me. I learned that there's my business, God's business, and somebody else's business, and I need to stay in my business. I don't need to be fixing stuff. I don't need to be people-pleasing. I don't need to be turning myself inside out for anybody else, okay? So you can do all this work intellectually and even writing it, but then when you get into a relationship, we start getting to practice this work. When you get a job, you have an internship or an externship or a training period. So when we have wounds or something doesn't work, failures are good. There's nothing wrong with failure because, a lot of people do all of this because they're afraid of failing. At the same time, they're afraid of failing this other person because they care about the person, So they're afraid of failing. But failure is good. And to learn from our failures is even better because we're all going to fail, but hopefully we'll learn from those failures. So here's the quote. The quote comes from a book to when I started practicing these relationships that I had to read like 5 times because every time this person broke up with me, every time I got too clingy or every time they, needed some space and they needed to run away, maybe their capacity for love wasn't the same as my capacity for love. We have all different kinds of issues going on. However, this person, I say this with all respect because this person was a catalyst for my growth, because when we broke up, I didn't jump to and hop to another relationship. I see that sometimes where people will spitefully hop to another relationship saying, well, and I've done it myself back in my youth, So here's what happens is when we come from a place of scarcity or lack, and it doesn't always, sometimes the scarcity or lack isn't actually feeling that in a relationship, it's feeling it in other areas, and we use this relationship as a distraction not to feel pain or miserable in another area where we may feel failure in our life. Instead of fixing the failure, we have a tendency to distract, find the solution, So here's what Don Miguel Ruiz says in The Mastery of Love, which I thought of when that works with this other stuff that I was thinking. So it brought me back to this, what I had read in this book. It says, you are a millionaire in love, and someone knocks on your door and says, hey, I have love for you here. You can have my love if you just do whatever I want you to do. When you're full of love, what is going to be your reaction when you're full of love? And it says you will laugh and say, thank you, but I don't need your love. I have the same love here in my heart, and even bigger and better, and I share my love without condition. But what is going to happen if you are starving for love? If you don't have the love in your heart and someone comes and says, you want a little love? You can have my love if you just do what I want you to do. If you're starving for love and you taste that love, you are going to do whatever you can for that love. You can even be so needy that you give your whole soul just for a little attention. Reminds me of a Eddie Murphy video where he was talking about a cracker, that sometimes when people haven't been in a relationship or they haven't had sex in a long while, when they do get it, it's like, oh, this is the best cracker. It's like, and so you're starving. You don't even care what's in that cracker. And that's the thing is when we jump into these sexual relationships or we're just, that sex drive is there and it's all in this chemistry and it's all in this physical attraction. And so we want to make this one person it. Then we aren't getting to know that person because we're coming from a different place. So if we take our time in relationships, this gives the guy, if you're not trying to, because once we make this connection sexually, whether we like it or not, and we think, some people will, it's just going to cause an attraction there. We're going to either want more of it or not. And it's not always the same case with both people that they want more or not. And this is where hurt and more pain and more wounds get added on and compromising ourselves because maybe we feel used. If, we offer ourselves up and are willing to give everything, then after somebody has everything, then they can't reciprocate that. When we can look at it as if, why did I do this? Why did I lose myself in this? Then we can have the healing part. so that when we go into the next relationship, once we've healed from that, we're not going to attract the same thing, because you're not going into the relationship talking about your exes. You're not going into the relationship with an obsession. The thing is that when I talked about those things in the beginning that we're looking for when we get into a relationship, what I have learned for myself is, because I understand, we look into their eyes, we see their soul, we look into their eyes, or we had this or that, and then for some reason they pop off, they're not there anymore. And we feel empty, and we feel lost, and we feel confused, and we don't understand, and then we start trying to rationalize, why are they doing this, instead of being in our own business. When we go into the relationship in our own business, when we go into the relationship realizing that what we do in this beginning, that if we're ignoring people in the beginning to obsess with this person, that they're going to have that expectation. And then when you don't, when things do calm down and you want to hang out with your friends, they're going to think you don't love them because you want to hang out with your friends, which doesn't mean the case, because love involves going in different levels. It's nice to think like the Hollywood movies and stuff, that it's just, instantaneous. And I'm not saying that it isn't for some people, because some people had examples of what healthy love is, so they're going to attract that into their family. But a lot of us did not have examples to what healthy love is, so we're going to attract what we need to heal, so that we understand what healthy love is and come from a place of more compassion. I think that it's very few people that come from, and working with people, oftentimes I see that people that have families that stay together have a longevity of staying together, that oftentimes they're attracting into their lives somebody who has that kind of longevity as well. I'm not saying 100% of the time, but I'm saying that they had an example. When we have an example that is dysfunctional, oftentimes we act out that dysfunction when we do begin relationship courses. And maybe it's not an apparent, a lot of times people were raised in the codependent because we were raised as a society to be in this codependence type state. That's hence why we end up, buying things that we don't need, that really aren't too practical, in which, now I think that the evolution of what's happened with the lockdown, the pandemic, and all of this has caused us to be more conscious and to really give more thought into what we're buying and have bought, and that not everything is necessary for material, that we may have things come up in this life that are unexpected and unseen. So learning to live more simply might be something that we could think about, certainly more consciously, so that consciousness can spread into all of our relationships, not just dating, but most of all the relationships within ourselves. Because when I went to my life coach, when I was heartbroken, what she had to explain to me is this love and this validation that I was seeking outside of myself. When I would go to her, tore up or hormonal or whatever, and she would say, well, how would you feel? I had to learn what my validation was. And not just that, I had to learn how to communicate my validation in a way, because not having a healthy, example to learn how to communicate, I had to learn how to communicate this. We think we just know this as we get to be an adult, and that our wounds are healed because we've decided intellectually we're not going to do these things. But healing is feeling. It can't be just thought about. We have to feel those feelings, and when we have these relationships where we re-feel these feelings over and over again, if we keep taking the same stuff into the relationships, talking about the last partner and the last partner and the last partner, we're carrying in our wounds. If we can examine ourselves, then we're going to get, release more weight and release more weight, because this stuff weighs us down. It's in our energy. I'm just saying, it's in our energy. So your energy field will attract to you. We have attraction and repulsion. Everything's cosmically connected, and cosmically connected means it's scientific too. And we do have this energy field. The whole earth has this energy field. We're now experiencing an eclipse, a new moon, and there's reason that people do observe these things, like those mystics that I talked about in the past, that understanding that all these things come together, that there is an energy, and we can get to know our own energy. and not look for energies outside of ourselves that we perceive as God, because we don't want to, first off, when we're born, it's natural that we get other people because our parents are our gods. But then that leads into codependence in some occasions. So being able to teach people to feel their own feelings, I hope is going to be part of this evolution into this, whatever's going on now, is that when we can learn to feel and heal, then we can learn to release a bunch of the energy that holds us back and keeps us needing to heal those wounds. Because I had a sponsor that used to say, well, you can do it now or you can do it later. And I have to say that that's kept me clean almost 24 years, because in those times when I've had these relationship issues or had money issues or had different kinds of issues, instead of backing myself into a corner, creating more and more problems, I did like I told you when I had that relationship after I worked on my codependency. I worked on myself rather than escaping and distracting. After plenty of ass kickings, I finally learned that, Stacy, what is it about you that is attracting this? Taking responsibility, because that's empowering. And when you walk around and you feel a little bit empowered, you're not going to have people mess with you. You're not going to be attracting things, people that need to bump up against your unhealed wounds once you heal your wounds, if that makes sense. So what kind of energy do you want to attract to you? And being able to start opening your imagination up, because when you're living in this limited sphere, to get a realistic imagination, we can continue to grow. But we can't, when we let go of all this limitedness and these old wounds and old hurts and this limited thinking, we can get into this imagination and create a more conscious relationship with somebody. I think that what is cool is when we go into a relationship and you want to see the other person experience things together, that you experience these things together, that you don't have to be in the know of everything, that you both get to learn together, that nobody has to be an expert, that you're just on life's journey, and you don't have to think about your past, that it's all about exploration. So I hope that you're able to take this into your new relationships, that you're able to sit with a person and listen to them, talk about their dreams, goals, aspirations, and be able to cheer them on. Because if you're in a healed state, in a healthy state, that's what you're going to want to hear. But if you're not healed and healthy, you're going to want to entertain those old wounds. Your date is not your sponsor, your life coach, your therapist, your clergy. Your date is supposed to be someone like yourself. The love has to come from within. You have to love yourself. You have to value your own time and self. You have to adore, have those things that are your hobbies and what you want, what you like to do. You have to show that from the beginning and be able to take time to take attention for yourself, and what you need, what your needs, wants, and desires are. And respect somebody else's, because when you can do that for yourself, you can respect somebody else when they have to do that for themselves. That's what love is. Love is not possessing people. Love is not owning people. Love is not telling people or having them have to think like you think to feel validated. Love is not having to have them just adore you and only you to feel loved. Love isn't about you being the sole, thing of attention. It's about them being able to have attention somewhere else and bring it back, and you all be able to look at it and talk about it, without judgment, without a need to tell the other person how they need to handle it, to be able to trust. Trust goes a long way. These things, when you're in an unlimited relationship, it keeps growing. It doesn't keep constricting. And if you're in a relationship and it keeps constricting, you have to take your power back. See, this is one of the first things about codependency, is we talk about taking your power back. If you don't give your power away in the beginning, you won't have to take it back. So I hope that this video has been helpful. And I look forward to connecting with you next week. And until then, I wish you much peace and love. And thank you so much for your time. Bye.